The night felt different, though nothing in the city had changed. Cars moved, people talked, and lights glowed like always. But inside Armand, something restless refused to settle. He stood outside the cafe for a moment, staring through the glass. Zara was already there, sitting at their usual table, her fingers wrapped around a cup of coffee. She looked calm, almost distant, as if she had already decided something he didn't know yet. Armand took a deep breath and stepped inside. The warm air wrapped around him, carrying the soft smell of roasted coffee and sweet desserts. He walked toward her slowly, trying to keep his heartbeat steady. When Zara looked up and saw him, she gave a small smile. It was familiar, but not as bright as before. Still, it was enough to give him hope. "You're late," she said lightly. "Traffic," he replied. Though that wasn't really the reason. He had been standing outside, gathering courage. He sat down across from her, placing his hands on the table. They felt slightly cold. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, but it wasn't warm either. It was something in between, something uncertain. "You look serious," Zara said, studying his face. Armand forced a soft smile. "Just thinking." "About what?" He paused. This was the moment. Everything he had been planning for weeks had led to this. He glanced around the cafe. The lights were soft, the music quiet. It was perfect. Or at least it should have been. "About us." He said. Zara didn't react much. She simply leaned back in her chair, watching him carefully. Armand reached into his pocket, feeling the small box there. His heart started beating faster. He thought about all the moments they had, shared the long walks, the late-night talks, the dreams they had once spoken about together. He thought about how sure he had been that this was the right step. He took the box out and placed it gently on the table. Zara's eyes dropped to it. Her expression didn't change, but something in her gaze became sharper. "Armand," she said quietly. He opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant ring. It wasn't expensive, but it was chosen with care. "Zara," he began, his voice steady but soft. "We've been together for 3 years. You know me, and I know you. We've been through a lot, and I don't want to imagine my life without you." He paused, searching her face for any sign of warmth. "I want to build something real with you," he continued. "Not perfect, but honest. Something that grows over time." So, he took a small breath. "Will you marry me?" The question hung in the air. For a brief second, Armand expected her to smile, maybe even tear up. He imagined her saying yes, imagined the relief, the happiness, the future opening in front of them. But none of that happened. Zara didn't smile. Instead, she looked at the ring for a long moment, then slowly closed the box with her fingers. "I can't," she said. The words were quiet, but they felt loud. Armand blinked, as if he hadn't heard correctly. "What?" "I can't say yes," she repeated. Confusion spread across his face. "Why?" Zara leaned back again, crossing her arms. Her expression was calm, almost too calm. "Because queens don't take less than they deserve." "Coup?" she said. Armand stared at her, the sentence echoing in his mind. "Less?" he asked slowly. "What do you mean, less?" Zara sighed softly, as if explaining something simple to someone who didn't understand. "I mean, I want more from life, Armand," she said. "I've been thinking about it for a long time. I want a bigger life. I want success, comfort, a certain level of status. I don't want to struggle." He felt his chest tighten. "And you think being with me means struggling?" She didn't answer immediately. That silence said enough. "I think," she finally said, choosing her words carefully, "that you're a good person. You really are. You're kind, you're honest, and you care about me. But that's not everything." Armand's hands slowly curled into fists on the table. "Then what is everything?" Zara looked at him directly. "Ambition, growth, power, the ability to give more than just emotions." He let out a quiet breath, trying to stay calm. "I am working on my career. You know that." "I know," she said. "But it's not enough. Not yet. And I don't want to wait years hoping it might be enough someday." Her words were clear, sharp, and carefully controlled. Armand felt something heavy settle inside him. "So that's it?" he asked. "After everything, this is what matters most to you?" "It matters," she replied, "because this is my life. I have to think about my future. And I'm not part of that future." He asked quietly. Zara hesitated for a moment. That small pause gave him a tiny bit of hope, but it disappeared quickly. "Not in the way you want," she said. The cafe around them continued as if nothing had happened. People laughed, cups clinked, music played softly. But for Armand, everything felt distant, like he was hearing it from far away. He looked at her, really looked at her, trying to understand how the person he loved could feel so different in this moment. "You could have told me," he said, "before this." "I didn't want to hurt you," she replied. He gave a faint, almost broken smile. "You think this doesn't hurt?" Zara looked down, avoiding his eyes. For the first time, she seemed slightly uncomfortable. But she didn't take back her words. "I'm being honest," she said. "That's better than pretending." Armand nodded slowly. "Honest," he repeated. He reached forward and closed the ring box himself, his movements calm, almost mechanical. He picked it up and slipped it back into his pocket. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Armand stood up. Zara looked up at him. "You're leaving?" He didn't answer immediately. He just looked at her, taking in her face, her expression. Everything that had once meant so much to him. "Yeah," he said finally. "I think I should." "Armand?" She began, but stopped. He waited, but she didn't continue. There was nothing left to say. He nodded once. A quiet goodbye, and turned away. Each step toward the door felt heavier than the last. But he didn't stop. He didn't look back. He didn't want to see her sitting there, calm and certain, while he felt like everything inside him was falling apart. When he stepped outside, the cool air hit his face. He took a deep breath, but it didn't help much. The city looked the same, but it didn't feel the same anymore. He walked without direction at first, his mind replaying her words again and again. Queens don't take less than they deserve. Not enough. Ought. In the way you want. Each sentence cut deeper. The more he thought about it, he stopped at a quiet corner, leaning against a wall. For a moment, he closed his eyes, trying to steady himself. He wasn't angry. Not yet. He was just empty. He had imagined a future with her so clearly that he had never really prepared for a life without her. But now, that future was gone, and in its place was something unknown after a while. He straightened up and started walking again. This time, his steps were slower, more deliberate. He reached his apartment late at night. The space felt quiet, almost too quiet. Everything inside reminded him of Hertha's small things, the shared memories. The moments that now felt distant. He sat down on the edge of his bed and stared at the floor. The ring was still in his pocket. He took it out and looked at it for a long moment. It had once felt like a promise. Now it felt like a question that had already been answered. Slowly. He closed his hand around it that night. Armand didn't cry, he didn't shout, didn't break anything, didn't call anyone. He just sat there in silence, feeling the weight of everything that had changed in a single moment. And somewhere deep inside him, something shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly. A decision he didn't fully understand it yet. But he felt it. The version of him that had walked into that cafe wasn't the same one who walked out. And as the night grew deeper, Armand made a choice without saying it out loud. He wouldn't stay the same, no matter how long it took. He would become someone no one could ever call not enough again. And with that silent promise, a new chapter of his life began, though he had no idea where it would lead. Time did not stop for Armand, even though part of him wanted it to. The days after that night felt heavy, but he didn't allow himself to stay stuck. Something inside him had changed, something quiet but powerful. He stopped looking at his phone, stopped checking old messages, stopped waiting for anything that was never coming back. Instead, he turned all that restless energy into movement. At first, it wasn't easy. He woke up early even when he hadn't slept properly. He forced himself to focus even when memories tried to pull him back. His small apartment became his starting point, a place where he sat for hours, planning, thinking, learning. He wrote down goals he had never taken seriously before. He searched for opportunities he had once ignored. Every rejection he had faced in life suddenly felt like a lesson instead of a failure. Armand took on extra work, learned new skills online, and pushed himself harder each day. He didn't talk about it. He didn't post about it. There was no need to prove anything to the world. This was personal. Months passed, the pain didn't disappear, but it changed shape. It became quieter, less sharp, more like a distant echo. Whenever Zara's words came back to him, they didn't break him anymore. They pushed him forward. Not enough. That sentence became a challenge. He improved his communication, learned how to present himself better, and slowly started building connections in his field. He took risks he would have been too afraid to take before. Some failed, but others opened doors. 1 year turned into 2. The man Armand was becoming no longer looked like the one who had stood in that cafe. His confidence grew, not loud or arrogant, but steady and grounded. He learned patience. He learned discipline. Most importantly, he learned to respect himself. His work began to show results. People started noticing him. Not because he asked them to, but because he had something real to offer. His ideas became sharper, his decisions more calculated. He built something meaningful from the ground up, something that carried his name with quiet strength. Meanwhile, life moved differently for Zara after rejecting Armand. She stepped fully into the life she had imagined. She surrounded herself with people who matched her ambitions, successful, confident, and well-connected. Her days were filled with meetings, events, opportunities that looked impressive from the outside. She dressed better, lived in a more polished environment, and posted moments that reflected success. People admired her. They told her she was doing well, that she was strong for choosing what she deserved. And for a while, she believed it completely. But over time, something felt off. The conversations she had were different now. They were less about feelings and more about deals, plans, and appearances. People smiled, but the smiles didn't stay long. There was always something behind them: competition, calculation, distance. Zara noticed it, even if she didn't admit it at first. One evening, she sat alone in her apartment, scrolling through her phone. Messages filled the screen, invitations, updates, plans, but none of them felt personal. None of them felt like someone truly cared how she was doing. She put the phone down and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. For no clear reason. A memory appeared in her mind. Armand. The way he used to listen without interrupting. The way he remembered small things about her. The way he made ordinary moments feel calm and real. She quickly pushed the thought away. That's in the past, she told herself. And yet, the memory stayed. Days turned into weeks, and those thoughts came back more often. Not constantly, but enough to disturb her peace. She would compare without meaning, to compare the people around her now with the way Armand had been. There was something missing. She just couldn't name it. Then one evening, everything shifted. Zara had been invited to a high-profile event in the city. It was the kind of place she had always wanted to be again, filled with successful people, full of opportunity. She arrived dressed perfectly, her confidence in place, her smile controlled and practiced. The room was alive with energy. Conversations flowed, glasses clinked, laughter echoed lightly. She moved through the crowd with ease, greeting people, exchanging words, playing her role well. But then, in the middle of it all, her attention caught on something. Or rather, someone. At the far end of the room, surrounded by a small group of people, stood a man in a well-fitted suit. His posture was relaxed, his presence strong without effort. People listened to him with interest, nodding, engaged in what he was saying. There was something familiar about him. Zara narrowed her eyes slightly, trying to see more clearly. Then he turned. Her breath caught. It was Armand. For a moment, everything around her faded. The noise, the movement, the lights, none of it mattered. All she could see was him, But this wasn't the Armand she remembered. There was no hesitation in his stance, no uncertainty in his expression. He looked calm, focused, and completely in control of himself. His confidence didn't need to be loud. It was simply there. Sarah felt her heart beat faster. How? She whispered to herself. She hadn't seen him in years. She hadn't heard much about him either. And yet here he was, standing in a place she had worked so hard to reach, as if he belonged there naturally. She watched him for a few seconds longer, trying to understand what she was feeling. It wasn't just surprise, it was something deeper, without thinking too much. She started walking toward him. Each step felt heavier than it should have. She wasn't nervous, at least. She didn't think she was, but something inside her felt unsettled. When she finally reached him, he was just finishing a conversation. The people around him smiled, shook his hand, and slowly moved away. For a brief moment, he stood alone. Zara took that chance. Armand? Her voice was soft, but it carried enough to reach him. He turned, their eyes met. For a split second, something familiar passed between them: recognition, memory, history. But it didn't stay. Armand's expression remained calm. Zara, he said, his tone polite. It's been a while. No surprise. No emotional reaction. Just acknowledgement. That alone caught her off guard. You look different, she said, trying to find the right words. He gave a small, controlled smile. People change. She nodded slowly, studying him. I didn't expect to see you here. I could say the same, he replied. There was no tension in his voice, but there was distance. Zara felt it clearly. I've heard some things about you, she said. You've been doing well. I've been working, he said simply. That answer was so straightforward, so unlike the kind of responses she was used to, that it made her pause. For a moment, she didn't know what to say next. This wasn't how she imagined this meeting would go. She had imagined it at all. Can we talk? She asked finally. Armand looked at her for a second, then nodded. Sure. They moved to a quieter corner of the room. The noise faded slightly, giving them space. Zara took a breath. I didn't expect you to become all this. All this. He repeated. She gestured lightly. Successful, confident, different. He leaned back slightly, his expression thoughtful. I didn't expect a lot of things either. There was something in his tone that made her chest tighten. She hesitated, then said, You don't seem affected by what? He asked. By everything that happened. She replied. Armand looked at her for a moment, then answered calmly. It affected me, just not in the way you might think. Zara felt a quiet tension build inside her. Do you ever think about it? She asked. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked around the room briefly, then back at her. Sometimes, he said, that was it. No details. No emotion. Just a simple truth. Zara swallowed softly, because in that moment, she realized something she hadn't expected. He wasn't holding on anymore. And somehow, that felt heavier than if he had been angry, because anger meant he still cared. But this calm distance felt like she had been left behind completely. And for the first time since that night in the cafe, Zara felt something unfamiliar rising inside her. Regret. But she didn't know yet how deep that feeling would go. The air in the event hall had grown warmer as the night went on, but for Zara, it felt colder than ever. She stood near the corner, watching Armand from a distance, trying to find the right words, the right approach, the right moment. Her heart pounded in her chest like a drum, reminding her that she had never really stopped caring. The success, the people, the events, they all felt hollow now. She had everything she thought she wanted. But seeing him again had shifted something inside her, something she hadn't expected, a mix of admiration, longing, and regret. She took a step forward, hesitating, then another. Her polished heels clicked softly against the marble floor. Each step toward him was a step into the past she had once abandoned. The crowd seemed to blur around her as her focus sharpened on him. Armand was talking to someone briefly, smiling, nodding. But there was a poise, a calm control in him that she hadn't seen before. She realized with a jolt that he had changed far more than she had anticipated. He had grown not just in appearance, but in presence, in confidence, and the quiet kind of power that demanded respect without asking for it. "Armand," she called softly, hoping her voice would reach him without drawing attention. He turned slowly, and for a fraction of a second, their eyes locked. The memories flooded back: late-night conversations, small arguments, shared laughter, the subtle warmth of simpler days. But the moment was fleeting. Armand's expression was composed, polite, not inviting, not distant, just neutral. That neutral expression made her heart ache in ways she hadn't expected. She had imagined confrontation, tears, maybe even a fight. But the calm in his eyes told her he had moved beyond what had once bound them. "It's been a while," he said quietly, his voice steady. "Yes," she admitted, her throat tight. "Too long." There was a pause. She wanted to reach out, to touch his hand, to say something that would make him look at her differently. But the words faltered. Her confidence, which had carried her through so many boardrooms and social events, evaporated. This wasn't a presentation or a negotiation. This was personal. This was raw. "I've heard a lot about you," she said finally, trying to regain composure. "You've done very well for yourself." Armand's lips curved slightly, just a hint of acknowledgement. "Thank you," he said. "I've been working on it." "Working and growing," she added, almost as if to emphasize that she had noticed the difference. He nodded, his gaze calm but unreadable. "Growth is part of life," he replied. "Sometimes it comes quietly." Zara studied him, her mind racing. The man before her was no longer the one she had dismissed. The hesitation, the uncertainty, the fragility, they were gone. In their place was someone steady, unshakable, and self-assured. And in that realization, she felt the sting of regret more sharply than she ever had before. She had left. She had chosen ambition over love. And now he stood before her as proof of everything she had overlooked. I never expected to see you like this," she admitted, voice almost a whisper. "I thought I would be ahead, that I would have everything. But seeing you now, She paused, searching for the right words, feeling vulnerable in a way she hadn't allowed herself in years. "I realize I underestimated what you could become." Armand looked at her quietly, letting her words sink into the space between them. He didn't interrupt. He didn't offer validation or apology. He simply listened. And that listening, that calm presence, made her feel the full weight of her own choices. The life she had pursued so relentlessly, the ambition she had clung to, suddenly seemed smaller compared to the growth he had achieved quietly, with focus, patience, and determination. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said finally, her voice trembling slightly. "I thought I was making the right choice for myself, but I can see now that I was wrong." Armand's expression softened, but not in the way she had imagined. There was no spark of rekindled affection, no sudden warmth, no dramatic reaction, just a measured calm. He took a deep breath, as if carefully choosing his words. "You didn't make a mistake," he said gently. "You made a choice, and every choice has consequences." Zara's heart sank. She had expected him to forgive, to plead, maybe even to reach out. But his words were final, not cruel, but decisive. She felt the distance between them deepen, and with it, the reality of what she had lost. "I want to choose differently now," she said, almost urgently. "I want to try again." Armand shook his head slowly, his eyes meeting hers with clarity. "I loved you once, yes," he said softly. "But I have grown since then. I have built a life where I don't need to prove my worth to anyone, and I cannot go back to someone who didn't value me when it mattered." Zara felt her chest tighten. She had imagined this moment countless times in her mind. And none of those imagined scenarios had prepared her for his calm refusal. His voice carried no bitterness, no anger, only truth. That truth hit her harder than any confrontation could have. She realized, suddenly and fully, that the Armand she had rejected was not the boy she had walked away from. He had become a man who didn't need her to feel complete. I understand," she whispered, though she did not fully understand. Her ambition, her achievements, her carefully constructed world, all of it felt hollow in comparison to the quiet strength standing before her. I thought I could come back." "You can come back," he said softly, "but not in the way you imagine. I cannot be a part of someone's life as a backup plan. I cannot reclaim what I once offered freely. You missed the chance to grow together with me. That chance is gone." She felt tears prick her eyes, though she blinked quickly to keep them at bay. The irony was bitter. She had always believed she needed more. That love was secondary to success, that her life demanded ambition over affection. And now, in facing the man she had left behind, she realized the cost of that belief. Not just the heartbreak, but the distance, the loss, the irreversible consequences of choices made in pursuit of a life she thought she deserved. Armin glanced around the room, then back at her. His presence was unshakable, calm, composed. "I hope you find what truly makes you happy," he said finally, his tone gentle but firm. "I hope you learn to value what you have before it's gone. And I hope you live a life that honors your own worth, not just your desires." His words cut deeper than any anger or accusation could have. They were not meant to punish, but to reveal a mirror reflecting her own missteps. Zara felt a quiet ache in her chest, the kind that comes from seeing someone you love evolve into someone you no longer belong to. The realization settled heavily. She had lost him not because he left, but because she had never truly appreciated him when she had the chance. Armand gave her a final soft nod. He didn't wait for a response. He simply turned and walked away, moving through the crowd with effortless grace. People smiled at him, shook his hand, but he seemed untouchable, distant, self-contained. Zara watched him go, each step pulling him further into a life she could no longer claim. The room seemed to fade around her. The music, the chatter, the clinking of glasses, all of it became background noise. All that remained was the echo of his presence and the realization that she had missed her chance. The life she had built, the success she had achieved, suddenly seemed empty compared to what she could have shared with him for the first time. She understood something essential. Knowing one's worth is not about ambition or power or status. It is about recognizing the value of those who love you, the moments you have, the choices you make. And sometimes that realization comes too late. Zara stood still, watching Armand disappear into the crowd. The feelings in her chest were complex, a mix of longing, regret, admiration, and sorrow. She wanted to call him back, to reach him, to undo what had been done. But deep down, she knew it was impossible. He had moved beyond the life she had rejected. He had become someone who no longer needed validation from her or anyone else. The night ended. But the impact of that encounter lingered. Zara walked home alone, her heels clicking softly against the pavement, each step echoing in the quiet streets. The city lights shimmered around her, but they offered no comfort. She had everything she thought she wanted, yet what truly mattered had slipped through her fingers. Her ambition, her carefully curated life, now felt small and hollow in comparison to the quiet, steadfast growth Armand had achieved. She thought back to the words he had once said, and now the meaning hit her fully. "I have built a life where I don't have to prove my worth to anyone." Those words were not just a declaration, they were a lesson, a reminder, a truth she could no longer ignore. Her choices had shaped her path, but they had also closed doors she could never reopen. As she reached her apartment, she paused, standing before the door. The night air carried a chill, and the city felt unusually silent. She realized she had been chasing a version of life she thought she deserved, while the man she had loved had quietly built a life he could be proud of without needing to chase anyone's approval. For the first time, Zara felt the weight of genuine loss, not just a temporary longing, but the permanent absence of what could have been. And she knew in that moment that some lessons are learned only through absence, only through regret, only through the quiet realization that some opportunities, once lost, can never return. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her, but the image of him, the calm strength, the quiet confidence, the distance he had chosen remained.